My name's Matt Glover, and you met already one of the other lawyers at our office, Co Baxter. He was one of the presenters. I want to thank Aaron and David again for hosting this seminar in conjunction with us. This is the third year that we've done it, and it was a unique opportunity for us to provide a free seminar to lawyers. And this year, we've added the component of the ethics hour, which I'm always reminded come December is more important than what I realize when I get my transcript. I've got some handouts that I want to circulate, if you don't mind. We have a tendency to talk about the cases that, it would be foreign to me to come speak to you about divorce cases since I don't do divorce work. And it would be foreign to me to talk to you about bankruptcy because I don't do bankruptcy. I know a lot of you all do a little bit of everything. With our practice, we're very focused in on personal injury. So the examples that I give, the only way I know to do it is to give examples based upon the kind of law that we practice. And so you have to bear with me. I guess let me tell you a little bit about myself because I think that kind of sets the tone for what I want to talk about today. I didn't grow up in Alabama. I've been here since '98. I really like it, especially living in Tuscaloosa. But I grew up in West Virginia, which, is very nice to live in, except the winters are pretty cold. And they're not as cold as other areas of the country, but they're sufficiently cold. And it gets cold early and it stays cold, early spring, sometimes even appears to be early summer. But growing up where I did, I didn't think anything of it because everybody else did the same thing. But we heated our house, wasn't a big house, but we heated it with firewood. We had a burner on this end of the house and a burner end on this end of the house, and that's how we did it. And when I was 8 years old, that wasn't a big deal. It just seemed nice. But being the only boy in the family, as I started to get older, I learned that my job was to, and you can see how scrawny I am, so it was a tough task. As my dad always said, everybody likes the warm house, but nobody likes what it takes to make the warm house. So you cut the wood down, you load it up in a truck, you unload it, then you bust it, then you stack it, and then you bring it in the house. And it's a process, without a doubt. And what I've learned in the practice of law is everybody wants successful results for their clients, like a warm house. To me, the difference is who's willing to go through the process to make it happen. And I think if you apply that in no matter what your area is, whether it's divorce work, bankruptcy, you can come to it with the mindset that there is something that I can do that will distinguish me from the other people around me. We just heard a good presentation on marketing, and we have people in our firm that are very, it's their passion. They love marketing. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I don't understand it. I'm not good at it. I think one marketing tool, though, we all have that can distinguish ourselves from the others who do what we do is the quality of our work. Let's face it, David Hogg, he's out of the room. I can talk about him. He's not the flashiest lawyer in the world. He gets good results, and I can tell you why he gets good results. He gets good results in all that he does because he puts the process in. He works at it. And so that's what I want to talk to you today. Now, I want to obviously use kind of the cases that we're working on. I hope everybody's had an opportunity to circulate the, are y'all doing that? See, I'm not even smart enough to figure out how to deal with this. Co, is this the one? All right, I'll just do it this way. All right, if y'all see, it doesn't have to be a tractor trailer. It could be any kind of commercial vehicle, okay? do any of you all engage in discovery? You send out discovery requests? You do that? Now, from my experience, usually when you send out the first set, you don't really get a whole lot. Or you may get a lot in volume, but you don't get a lot in substance. Because good lawyers, I think, they're trained not to really give it up unless you ask for it exactly the right way, for the right time period, in a manner that's not objectionable. And even if it is objectionable, you can still assert objections just to see who is going to be persistent enough to really get what you need. And so here's my first point. This document here is, have any of you ever handled a case that involved any type of commercial vehicle? It could be a tractor trailer, it could be a company truck. A lot of these vehicles are subject to regulations, federal regulations, state regulations. Sometimes it's just a matter of company policy. We all think about, in our world, the sexy subjects like your driving record, it's really bad. You know, and I bet that company was pushing you over hours. You're working too many hours, and I bet you had drugs in your system. And, you know, those are the subjects that we have a tendency to look at first because, you know, they can drive the value of a case. One subject that kind of gets overlooked in a lot of cases, especially the ones we deal with, is just kind of the medical qualifications for someone to operate a vehicle. It's just not that juicy. You know, when you study diabetes, it's just not exciting. Or hypertension. Or vision. And so I think there's a tendency to kind of not focus time and attention on this subject that I think if you go through the process, if you're persistent, you can add value to your cases. All right? So you get a document like this in your very first production. See? It would have the driver's name on it. It would have a signature. And the proof of this, the point of the defense lawyer giving this to you would be, look, our guy's qualified. He's got a card, right? Now, I want you to think about that for just a second. What would happen if the standard at the IRS was simply, oh, we got your tax returns. You signed them. You're certifying everything's good. Well, nobody would ever get audited, right? Well, many times we get this and we look at it and we say, well, we got a valid card. It's signed. The effective date appears to cover the data, and so somebody would say, okay, let's go on to something like driving record. Well, let's take just a moment. Let's talk about this card. Because I think it's pretty eye-opening. How does a person get one of these cards? Let's say you operate in a UPS truck. Hey, take a test and a physical. Now, where do you think you go to do that? Who said that? Yeah. Now, keep in mind, I mean, this person's got their own doctor that may see them for X, Y, and Z, but now the company is the one who's got the obligation to make sure you get this completed. And so you're right. More often than not, the supervisor says, hey, look, you're up on the 2-year part. You need to go down. You need to get this form filled out. Now, what does that person really know about your medical history? Because keep in mind, you've got 10 doctors over here that treat you for all these conditions, but the company wants you to go in for a 15-minute screening with this person over here. I'm not even going to call him a doctor yet. It may be a doctor. Well, see, a lot of people didn't know that. And you go in, and it doesn't have to be a doctor. Now, there's some recent changes in the law, May of this year, but if you start looking in some of these strip malls where you'll see like the Mexican restaurant, a chiropractor, you'll see these people who advertise they do the DOT screening. And you may walk in there and it may be, before it didn't even have to be a nurse practitioner. Now, you see, you get one of these, but you have to ask yourself, well, what's the supporting documentation for that? One of the things you'll hear us say all the time is things sometimes they're really not the way they appear. And the appearance here is everything is good. Now, this is where the process comes in. Look, what does it take to make a successful lawyer? Look, all these TV shows, are there any legal TV shows currently? All I watch is football. But there was a time, I'm going to date myself a little bit, you had Ally McBeal, and she married Harrison Ford, and you had Boston Legal. He's moved on and has got some other kind of scandalous show. But when you would see what makes a successful lawyer, they'd show you the 8-minute clip in the courtroom, right? Where the person is asking compound questions and the witness is finally admitting something. And that's good. That's a good skill to have. It's a great skill to have. But what I think makes a successful attorney, in no matter what the area of practice is are you willing to do the things in your office when there's really no one around? You get this document, are you willing to push forward to see what is really behind it? Okay? So I just want to, I promise I don't go into these cases saying, I'm going to find the anomaly. I'm going to find the situation that supports my point. These are just cases that we've looked at, reviewed, and worked on in the recent history. Okay, interstate, wreck happens. Driver's got one of those little valid cards, okay? But tells the officer he crashes through a construction zone and crashes into people, or a person, and tells the officer that I just, I didn't see it was a construction zone. Just didn't, I missed it. Messed up. Didn't know it to the last second it was construction zone. Now I want you to think about this. Okay, you come up to this sign here, this is a construction zone, right? Doesn't take a whole lot of figuring out. Road work ahead, both sides of the interstate. Then road work 1,500 feet. Left lane closed. Get over. Flashing light. You see a lot of things here leading up to the construction zone. Light illuminating the construction zone. You get into the case. Perhaps the last thing that you're thinking of is there a medical issue here? I mean, it seems pretty straight. Somebody just busts through a construction zone. Somebody gets seriously hurt. Person said didn't really recognize it was a construction zone. You say, okay, it's on my form discovery. I'm going to ask for the medical file on the driver. You get that first card that I showed you, right? It says everything is good. So what do? How do you, just as an example, how do you push forward to really see are things the way they appear to be? Now, you've got in your handout on the very first page there, you may not get this initially, all right? You're going to get the little receipt that says everything is great. I've given you just an example of what is called the long form, the medical long form. This is so you go into the strip mall to the company doctor or the company whatever it is, and this is the form you got to fill out. Now, one of the first things I want you to notice is there are a lot of conditions that are inquired about, right? A lot of conditions. Hypertension, cardiovascular disease, drug usage, alcoholism, prescription medication, visual acuity, hearing, diabetes. Now, I'm going to be judgmental for just a second, all right? If this form is really followed, there's not a lot of truck drivers going to pass. It's not a healthy lifestyle. I mean, you go on over to the Loves whenever you leave here. It's a tough lifestyle. You're not exactly getting to work out a lot. Also, Rocky did in the movie. I remember he was doing push-ups in that over-the-top movie. They eating Hardee's every day, McDonald's every day. Look up in that cab. It's not a good lifestyle. And you do that for 20 years, hypertension, diabetes. Now look at the form for a second. And then you got to say at the bottom, I certify that everything I'm saying on this form is true, and if it's not true, then it may invalidate whether or not I'm qualified to drive. You got the pretty little receipt that said everything is Everything is great in paradise, but when you really look at this form, now we've got an issue. Because the top part, you've got to answer truthfully. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. Did you truthfully answer the question? Now, let me just ask you, how would you test whether or not the information was truthful if you ever get in the second round of discovery, the long form? See, this is what I'm talking about, the process of persistence. Medical records. Get their medical records. And you don't mean just from the company. Oh, you mean like all those other 10 or 15 people that they go to. Now, they do it to our clients all the time. You know this, right? Oh, yeah, we know that you're claiming a neck fusion. You got a bad neck, but now look what we've done. We've gone back into your history, and we found that 8 years before, you went to the doctor and you said you had a what? A hurt neck. Or you've been to the chiropractor 40 times. Look, they do that to us all the time, right? Why is it not fair in the process of persistence to do the same to them? You get the medical records. That's one great example. Now look, that's not sexy, right? First off, have you ever tried to read a doctor's handwriting? It's tough. It's not easy. They don't like us. They produce the information out of order. You got to put it together like a puzzle. Anybody can do that, right? Who's willing to do it? That's one example. What else can you do? Now, you got to remember, these doctors these medical cards are long. They can be good for 3-month period, 6-month period, 9-month. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes, but that may not be the only long form, right? There may be 10 of those long forms out there. This person may have been with the company for 10 years and may have required an annual evaluation. There may be 10 of those. Now, what can you do with 10 of those? Right? You line them up. You start looking for inconsistencies in them. Or you may find out that the person was employed somewhere else and had long forms and medical forms. How about this? You think they ever filed for disability? Can you only imagine what you'll find if the truck driver has in fact applied for disability and they're driving on the road? Look, so we're just going to use this ongoing example here. Because remember, things aren't always the way they appear. Now this is a typical completed form. Now you remember, this is the guy that didn't see the construction zone. Sometimes it's just not that difficult. This is on the form. This is on the very form that leads to the person who says the person is qualified to drive. This is information right on the form. Look here. You gotta have it's called a Snellen test. I don't really understand all the details of it, but he failed. Look, this is what the so-called company doctor is aware of. It makes you wonder why they go to the company doctor, right? That's just one example. You know, up until this year, think about this. These people that sign off on these forms, they didn't even have to have any training. They didn't have to have any training on the regulations that were applicable to see whether or not someone was qualified to drive. Which means you go into the chiropractor. Look, I love chiropractors. They're good people. I'm treated by one. But what does a chiropractor who is untrained know about cardiovascular disease and the requirements of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and whether Aaron's qualified to drive a truck or not? But that's what was, these people, a lot of them were not even trained. They didn't even know what the requirement, they're signing off on forms, not really understanding or appreciating what they do. This is an example of one. Someone who fails a test, yet they get certified. Same driver. What's monocular vision? I didn't know what monocular vision was. Anybody know what monocular vision is? I don't know what it means. Depth perception. I know there's problems with depth perception. Tunnel vision. Now, you think about that now. Is that, it says right here. It's not that simple. I'm not even sure you have to have training. Monocular drivers are not qualified. Monocular vision, yes. Okay, what should happen? You shouldn't get the pretty little Christmas card saying I'm qualified to drive. Now again, this is not an anomaly. For 12 years, this is not an anomaly. The only thing that's keeping you, in whatever case you're working on, from getting to this, remember, it's not the 8-minute trial clip that you're going to see on TV. It's what are you willing to do in the privacy of your own office? Are you going to push, be persistent, and go through the process to do what it takes? It's not in the first round of discovery, I promise you. Unless you've got the most honest defense lawyer in the history of the world, you're not going to get the good stuff early on. Okay, that's just one example. Oh, yeah, you had a great tip. What's your name? Yeah, I waited till you put something in your mouth. Oh, man. You're getting way too ahead of me. You're getting way too ahead of me. No, thank you. That's another great point. A simple thing, and we're going to get to that. Look, right out of the medical records. Problems with glare when driving. I don't know what the HS is. Difficulty reading traffic signs. It's not an anomaly. But look now, think about it. Jim knows this. Y'all know Jim Jacobs? Jim knows this, okay? So if Jim's sitting there and he's got a case, I know, somebody busted through a construction zone, lady got hurt real bad, all right? What's that case worth? You know, put it in Houston County, real conservative place, right? And put it in front of an extremely conservative judge, okay, whatever. That case has got a value in and of itself, right? That case has got a value in and of itself. Does that case have a different value if you, through the persistence and the process and pushing and doing the things you need to do, does it have a different value with this kind of information? I think it does, right? Okay. Remember, we all want the good results for our clients. The question is, no matter what case, are we willing to do what's necessary to get there? Oh, yeah. Disability. Visually impaired. Okay. Now, this is... go ahead. Yeah. 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 And that's where you really, because you're going to run into that. You know, first off, you can't really subpoena documents from the VA. You know, the beautiful government doesn't have to do anything that they don't want to do. And so most of the times you've got to get the other side to sign a release to get the information. And I guarantee they're going to say, you know, what's this have to do with anything? What's this have to do with anything? You know, and you got all these HIPAA regulations out there. This person was qualified. You saw the pretty little Christmas card said he was qualified. And unfortunately, what do you run into sometimes, right? I know we've got some former judges in here, right? Sometimes you run into judges who just are not going to let you go down this road. I hate it. It upsets me. But I think more often than not, you do get the information because most judges are receptive to it, especially if you can show the person some reason why things aren't the way they appear, okay? Just to give the example that you raised. You know, there's something called the psychotherapist patient privilege. Do y'all know what that is? Basically, if you talk to a counselor, so to get the VA records, first off, you just try to subpoena them. You don't get them. You ask them, will you sign a release? Not going to sign a release. Okay, do we need to go to the judge? No, you don't need to go to the judge. Here's what we'll do. We'll get the documents. We'll look at it. We'll decide whether or not they're protected. And if they're not protected, we'll give them to you. They're all protected by the psychotherapist patient privilege. It's just so intertwined. There's just no way to separate it out. You know, but there's procedures for that. Motion for in-camera inspection. Let the judge look at the documents and make the determination. But again, it's not easy. I mean, that whole process right there, they take 6 months. All right. Just so you'll know, and this is the downfall, or one of the things I see a problem with just saying, okay, look, you can go get this medical exam from anyone. I want to use this example. I think just about, I don't know the numbers. A lot of truck drivers have high blood pressure, but they just do. You know, I can just tell you from reviewing the forms, high blood pressure, I mean, of course, a lot of people have high blood pressure, but unhealthy lifestyle also, can really increase the chances of having high blood pressure. And it's not an easy job. Again, if you have high blood pressure, this is where, we were talking about it this morning. Man, it's like if somebody comes up to me at church and says, my sister's going through a divorce, can you please help her out? I mean, you obviously know what you want to help, right? But man, I don't need to get into this. I don't know anything about divorce, right? And if I jump into a divorce case, it takes the lawyer on the other side all of about 10 seconds to realize I don't know what I'm talking about. The same thing is true here. Look, if anything that you're going to, I realize a lot of people have general practice and you have to do a little bit of everything, right? But sometimes you got to ask yourself, do I really know what I'm doing? Am I willing to learn my craft here? When you get into this and you start talking about things like hypertension with federal regulations, you really got to know what you're talking about, because I can assure you that the people who signed the card saying someone was qualified probably didn't know what they were talking about. If you have high blood pressure, just as an example, I mean, they are really strict about whether you're qualified, and if you are qualified, how long will you be qualified? They can qualify you for a period of 3 months, okay? But if you find yourself in a 3-month qualification, when you come back the next time, you got to have a certain reading or you're not going to be qualified. You can't get a 3-month and then another 3-month. But now, because that's not allowed by the law. But you're going to see in this example here, that's exactly what happened. They go in, this is June, 3 months, because of high blood pressure. Come in September, they don't have the reading that they need to have. They get qualified again for another 3 months. That's the byproduct of, okay, we want you to go see this company doctor, except there's 5 company doctors down there. Or you may see John this time. You may see Tina next time. Well, Tina doesn't look at the form that John filled out. When you go in there to get your next medic, they don't pull your history. They say, well, let me look at your previous medical long form. They're just, okay, well, you got high blood pressure. I can give you a 3-month card. Well, see, there's only one way to figure that out, right? How do you figure that out? It's not an easy process. Okay. So here's the point I'm trying to make. They're not always the way they appear, right? Sometimes even the information's on the form is misinterpreted. Sometimes the supporting documentation doesn't support what's being reported. So you really just have to be willing to dig in there and do some of this work to figure it out on your own. But as Jim just said, it can make a difference in the value of a case. It can make a difference in any type of case that you have. Now let me throw this out to you. I just assumed for the longest time when there's a wreck, I think somebody told me they saw a wreck this morning on 84, that anytime there's a wreck involving a commercial vehicle, that there's a drug test, right? I mean, doesn't that just make sense? Right? Huh? Yeah. Do you think they have to do it every time? I mean, if I'm in a wreck, how about this situation? I'm involved in a wreck. Someone gets hurt, but I don't get cited. Does the company have to drug test me? Yeah. I just assumed for the longest time that, man, you're in a wreck and they're going to drug test you. Sometimes the company policies are a little more stringent than the regulations, but again, you got to dig in to know the regulations. You got to dig in to know the company policy. You got to dig in to see whether or not they comply with what they said they were going to do. But the circumstances, and let me tell you, if you've got a driver that you don't have to drug test, it's just kind of like getting pulled over for a DUI. I mean, sometimes you make a decision based upon what's in your company's best interest, right? So don't just assume that there's going to be a drug test. There's actually a chart. You can get this one off the internet pretty easy. But it outlines when you have to do a drug test according to federal motor carrier regulations and when you don't. All right? And you know the problem in Alabama is the drivers don't get cited very often, right? I mean, if the officer didn't witness it, there's not a whole lot that they can cite. And so a lot of times, absent a death or a company policy or a really serious injury that looks like it's going to lead to death, you may not find a drug test. But here's my point. Even if there is a drug test, what do you think is tested? What are they testing for? Huh? Okay, so if I've been drinking a beer, right? That happens some. I mean, occasionally you'll see a truck driver who has been drinking a little bit. Of course, the standards are a little bit lower on what the tolerance level is for a commercial driver. But you just don't see a lot of truck drivers out there throwing down a Bud Light and getting behind the wheel. It happens, but that's tested. Alcohol, they're going to test for that one. What else? So, give me an example. Cocaine. I agree with you on cocaine. A lot of these you think they're testing for, and they're not. Yeah. You think they're testing for that? So like Ambien? That's not going to show up probably. Oh, man, you got to be kidding me. That's true. So, here's my point. Fatality occurs, just like that pretty little Christmas card that says our driver was medically qualified. Trust me, they're probably going to come at you with, hey, our guy passed the screen. There's nothing in his system. Well, whoa. There's nothing in the system. Now, that's different than passing that screen. Because as we just determined, not everything is tested. Look, alcohol is a big deal. Cocaine is a big deal. Marijuana is a big deal. Here's what the requirement is. Can you all see that? Here's what they're required to test for. There's a lot of other things out there that I dare say are much more of a problem in terms of frequency that are not being tested for. As an example, prescription medication. Look, pain medication and Ambien. Pain medication and Ambien. Now, look, if you're 55 years old, there's a decent chance you've already started experiencing some problems staying asleep, right? That's just medical. And then here's the work schedule I want you to have. Today I want you to work from 7 to 7. Tomorrow I want you to work from 9 to 3. The next day I want you to drive all night. And by the way, when you do get some sleep, when you're on the road in Louisiana, I want you to sleep in that nice, comfortable sleeper berth right after you take a nice, warm, cozy shower at the Love's Truck and Stop. Now, let me tell you, that will screw you up, right? You try that. Cole his wife just had a baby. He knows you get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed. It messes you up. So what do people do? A lot of people do. They take things that help them sleep, right? This is right out of the industry literature. They know it's a problem. They know that there is a problem with addiction to pain medication. Well, if there's a problem with Ambien and there's a problem with pain medication, are we just going to wait for the federal government to catch up to require testing that will detect that? Because that can be detected. So how do you find out if it's in the system? Are you going to just wait, get the card Our guy passed the screen. I mean, how many of you have had a test in a case where someone failed the drug screen? Now, it happens, but let me tell you, if you got a fatality case and the driver failed the drug screen, they're going to do everything they can to avoid you finding a lawyer, that person finding a lawyer. They're going to be at the hospital. They're going to be trying to settle it with the family. Or they're going to try to do everything they can to resolve that case before there's a filing of a lawsuit. How many of you, after you filed a lawsuit, have really had the experience where you got a failed drug test? It happens. I've had them. More often than not, you're going to get the guy's clean. She's clean. He's clean. Maybe, right? But how are you going to test that? You've already given us one good reason, right? Something real simple. You just have to find out who the health insurer is, right? Blue Cross of Alabama. So what do you request? Of course, this is going to come with a fight. I mean, they're not going to just give this to you. They're not just going to let you issue a subpoena. They're going to file a motion to quash. They're going to do everything they can. But what will that produce? You're going to see every doctor they went to. You're going to get to see every pharmacy they went to. You're then going to get to do what? You're going to send subpoenas to the pharmacy. You're going to get the itemizations of the drugs, right? Or let's say that one of those, I heard Co say this morning, I think he's right, most of the time the truck drivers don't get hurt. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they get treatment. And if they get treatment in a hospital, that drug screen is going to be a lot more in-depth. Trust me, we know. They hit our clients with it all the time. I just want to show you one, okay? Then I'm going to get you back on track. Oh, yeah, here are the medicines of special concern according to the industry. Prescription drugs for anxiety, antidepressants, pain relievers, sleeping pills. So look, if these are the problems that the industry knows about, why aren't they testing for them? This is pain medication is Ambien, all right? This particular driver here is involved in fatality. Gets out of his vehicle. It's a horrific death. Horrific death. And has to go take a drug screen. Pops some pills, calm him down, even before the drug screen. I figured it was popping the pills, so then you'd have an explanation for why it was in the system. But it didn't show up because it doesn't test for that. Guy passed, flying colors. Look, you may have us on a lot of other issues in this case, but you don't have us on this one. And by the way, he's medically qualified too. Now, I don't really look. That's the same medication. That's the same medication. That's the same. Look at this. June, July, August, September, 70. That's quantity. 70, 70, 70, 70, 70. You see, there's some serious pill taking going on. Does it make a difference? I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I think it makes a difference on how most cases are evaluated. I'll end with this. I really think that no matter what case you're working on, and this is, look, I run into this all the time. There are times when I just feel like the defense lawyer's outworking me. Every so often, I get that sense, all right? It's kind of like losing a football game, right? Every so often, you have an experience that kind of gets you back on track. It kind of wakes you up. But what I know from watching other lawyers, I've worked with some really good lawyers on the plaintiff side. I've worked with some lawyers on the defense side, very good lawyers. I believe that it's the lawyers who really push, the lawyers who are really persistent. There's probably some even more negative words than that. Those are the attorneys that get the good results. Now, I'll end with that chopping wood analogy. You know, because of my size, there wasn't a whole lot of occasions where I picked up the axe and hit the wood and it busted the first time, as you can imagine. Some of those stumps would have knots in them, and you'd pound it, and you'd pound it, and you'd pound it, and I'm telling you, there'd be times when I'd sit there and say, I've pounded this thing 10 times, and I'm making absolutely zero progress, and then you hit it the 11th time, and you bust right on through. When you get in these cases, you just got to assume there's a pot of gold out there. And I don't mean just financially. I mean, you got to assume that you're going to find exactly what's out there to drive the value of your case. And you may have to bust through a lot of pieces of wood before you find what it is that you're looking for. But the good thing is that no matter if you clam up in trial, no matter if you're antisocial, which I have a tendency to be at times, whether you're not good in front of judges, which I've been accused of at times. Look, there's one equalizer that we've all got the ability, and that is to get in the office and to push. Unfortunately, in our profession, I don't think there's a lot of pushers. A lot of people want the prize, but they don't want the process. And so I think my point in trying to do this was to say, look, I don't care what the case is, you can apply these principles. I'm not holding myself out as being the ultimate pusher, okay? But I know what it takes. I know when I've done it, what the results have been, and I know when the other side have done it against me, what the results have been. And so that's what I wanted to share. Any questions? I got Aaron back on track big time. Right? You know, and I'm done. Did y'all see has anybody kept up with the Title Pro situation here in Dothan? Y'all remember what that is? A lady, I think her name was Tammy Peters. Oh, yeah. I learned this with David and Aaron. I mean, you can take these principles, and they're handling that set of cases. The same thing. I heard the district attorney in this county, you know, who's obviously a very good district attorney. Had nothing to this. You know, she stole the money. That was it. I've seen what these guys have done using these principles in that case, and they've dug up a whole lot more bad on a whole lot more people and a whole lot more companies using these principles.